You're watching what should be a routine fight between a legend looking to reclaim his throne and a tough journeyman trying to prove he belongs with the elite. Then suddenly, chaos erupts. Confusion fills the arena. Nobody knows if the fight is over or still going. One fighter is celebrating victory while the other is sitting dazed in his corner, and even the referee doesn't know what's happening. This is the story of one of the most controversial and dramatic fights in combat sports history. A clash that had everything: knockdowns, confusion, blood, and a finish that left everyone asking the same question: what the hell just happened? In one corner, we had the Spider, Anderson Silva, the man who redefined what it meant to be a striker in mixed martial arts. For years, Silva had been the boogeyman of the middleweight division, the fighter who could end your night with a single perfectly timed counter. His precision was surgical, his timing supernatural. But coming into this fight, questions lingered. Had Father Time finally caught up with the Brazilian magician? Was the aura of invincibility still intact? Across from him stood the Count, Michael Bisping, the epitome of British grit and determination. Bisping had spent his entire career being told he was good, but not great, that he was tough, but not championship material. He'd absorbed punishment that would break lesser men, fought through injuries that would sideline others, and kept pushing forward when logic said to quit. This was his moment, to prove that heart and work ethic could overcome pure talent. Round 1. As the opening bell rang, both fighters approached with the respect you'd expect from veterans of this level. Immediately, Silva began his trademark circling, that hypnotic movement that had mesmerized opponents for years. But Bisping wasn't having any of it. The Brit came out aggressive, throwing a head kick early that sent a message: "I'm not here to be intimidated." Silva slipped it effortlessly, that matrix-like evasion that made him famous. But you could see in his eyes that Bisping had his attention. What struck me most about this opening round was Bisping's refusal to play Silva's game. Where other fighters had been content to follow the Spider around the octagon, waiting for their moment, Bisping planted himself in the center and made Silva come to him. It was a brilliant tactical decision. Silva, looking more relaxed than we'd seen him in recent fights, began to find his rhythm. Those lightning-quick back fists started finding their mark, catching Bisping by surprise with their speed and timing. But every time Silva tried to establish distance for his kicks, Bisping closed it down with that relentless pressure. The crowd was electric, sensing something special brewing between these two warriors. Round 2. Round 2 saw both fighters settle into their respective games. Silva became more aggressive, more willing to engage in the pocket, while Bisping continued his pressure-heavy approach. The difference in this round was clear. Bisping was starting to solve the puzzle. Those sharp jabs began finding their home on Silva's chin. Bisping's footwork, so often overlooked throughout his career, was poetry in motion as he cut off angles and trapped Silva against the fence. When the Spider tried to circle away, Bisping was already there waiting for him. But Silva's class showed through in moments of pure brilliance. His head movement was still otherworldly, making Bisping miss by inches before countering with combinations that reminded everyone why he was considered the greatest striker the sport had ever seen. The most telling moment came when Bisping landed a clean shot that actually made Silva smile. Not the smile of arrogance, but the smile of a predator who just found his prey's range. It was a chilling reminder that with Silva, you're never truly safe. Round 3. This was the round where Anderson Silva reminded everyone exactly why he'd ruled the middleweight division for so long. After absorbing Bisping's pressure for 2 rounds, the Spider began to weave his web. Silva started taking the center of the octagon, forcing Bisping to fight off the back foot for the first time in the contest. Those precise kicks began finding their mark, each one designed to break down Bisping's base and set up something bigger. But then it happened, a moment that perfectly encapsulated this entire fight. Bisping landed a beautiful combination that actually wobbled Silva, dropping him briefly to one knee. The crowd erupted. For a split second, it looked like the Count might have found his moment. But the Silva recovery was immediate and terrifying. Like a wounded animal, he came forward with renewed aggression. backing Bisping against the fence and unleashing that devastating Thai clinch work.
What happened next was pure chaos. Silva's jumping knee connected flush, sending Bisping crashing to the canvas. The Spider immediately began celebrating, convinced he'd scored the knockout. The crowd was on their feet, the commentary team was confused, and even the cornermen weren't sure what was happening. But referee Herb Dean hadn't stopped the fight. The bell had sounded, but the confusion was total. Was the fight over? Was it not? Silva was celebrating while Bisping sat dazed on his stool, blood streaming from his nose. When Dean finally made it clear that the fight was continuing, the dynamics had completely shifted. Round 4. The fourth round began with Bisping looking visibly shaken but somehow still standing. His nose was a mess, blood was flowing freely, but that British resolve kicked in. This was the round that would define both fighters' legacies. Silva, sensing blood in the water, came forward with renewed purpose. Those crisp combinations that had made him famous began flowing like water. The precision was still there, the timing still perfect, but now there was an urgency that hadn't been present earlier. Bisping, to his credit, refused to crumble. Every time Silva landed something significant, the count fired back. His jab, that most fundamental of boxing techniques, became his lifeline in the storm. Each punch thrown with the desperation of a man who knew his career might be on the line. The crowd was witnessing something special. Two masters of their craft refusing to give an inch. Silva's creativity was on full display, throwing techniques from angles that seemed impossible. But Bisping's heart was equally impressive, absorbing punishment that would have stopped most fighters cold. Round 5. As the final round began, both fighters knew everything was on the line. Silva looked remarkably fresh for a man who'd been in a war for 20 minutes. His movement was still fluid, his combinations still crisp. The years of experience in 5-round fights was showing. Bisping, marked up and bloodied but still dangerous, knew he needed something special. The judges' scorecards were anyone's guess after that controversial third round, and he couldn't leave it to chance. What followed was 5 minutes of pure violence and artistry combined. Silva's high kicks whistled past Bisping's head with the precision of a metronome. In the final minutes, both men threw everything they had left. Silva's arsenal seemed endless: spinning kicks, flying knees, creative angles that only a fighter of his caliber could create. But Bisping met every technique with one of his own, refusing to be denied on this night. After 25 minutes of absolute warfare, it was time for the judges to render their verdict. In one of the most controversial decisions in the sport's history, all 3 judges scored the fight 48-47 for Michael Bisping by unanimous decision. The crowd exploded. Silva looked stunned. Bisping, bloodied and battered, had somehow found a way to defeat one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. In victory and defeat, both warriors earned something more valuable than any belt: respect. The controversy may never be fully settled, but one thing is certain. On this night, we witnessed 2 legends at their absolute best, pushing each other to limits they didn't know they possessed. What did you think of this classic? Who do you think really won this fight? And what other legendary matchups would you like to see broken down? Let me know in the comments below, smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth fight analysis. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.